What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video, another day, another dollar. We are breaking down our futures contract per usual. We'll jump into today. Price action, pretty wild day. Very crazy day. Extremely volatile day for the NASDAQ. They did some stuff that honestly, I don't think I've seen. If I have, it's definitely been a while since we've seen this type of move in NASDAQ. Pretty crazy. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. What happened today? First off, we need to be aware of what happened yesterday, right? We need to know context. Okay. So in yesterday's video, I discussed how we had an inside day, and we needed to look for continuation or lack of whenever we took out either the low or the highs. Okay. In ES's case, we opened up with a gap, and most of the indices, actually, the ES, in Nasdaq, and the Russell, all gapped lower today. I think Russell still held their gap. Yeah, Russell still held their gap, and man, oh boy, if you were short the Russell, you absolutely smoked it, right? Because they were in a balance. I mean, I just got to point this out real quick. I'm gonna go on a little rant here. They've been in a nice little balance the last couple of days, right? Using the 2120 as the high, basically, and then this low down here on the 15th at around 2074, right? So if you shorted yesterday's high near 2120, using that as your out, swing trading this to the downside, just maybe only looking for 2074, you got paid and then some. Matter of fact, they filled their downside gap. They had a gap on the downside. They need that we gapped up here, right? Gapped up. They've been holding that gap. They filled that gap today. So very impressive double distribution day down to the downside. They held today's downside gap and pushed lower. Very impressive push by the Bears today in Russell. Very good. So tomorrow you're going to treat it as 2 different days. Using the different distributions as your area of interest. So back to ES, the main thing that we're here for. We opened up with a gap, pushed up, filled the gap, and then pretty much grinded higher. I mean, we one time framed up in B period, pulled back in C, got a little bit of choppiness. D period finally grinded up. E, F, and G was also a grind to the upside. I found myself in some sticky situations. Was pretty much overall ended the day up very nicely. Took back yesterday's loss and then gained a little bit. So we're not too upset with how we traded on the day. Early on, definitely should have been a little bit more patient. I did trade shorts in A period against the gap fill and got paid on those pretty good, actually. Then in B period, that's when things got a little tricky for me. I took shorts in B against A's high. They popped up. I got stopped out. And then C period, I was taking longs. I believe, yeah, longs in C period to go and get the initial balance high. They pulled back, stopped me out, and pretty much that's where I got into a little bit of troubles. I had a little bit of size there. It pulled back, stopped me out, and it is what it is. D period. I took a long to get the initial balance high. That worked out very well. I had a 5 lot on to go and get. Actually, no, I had a 3 lot on. No, that was a 5 lot on to go and get the initial balance high. We got it. It pulled back because I was long 37. Basically, once we took out C's high, a long 37.75 with a 5 lot to go and get that. We pushed up to 45, 46. I took those off. Very good trade there. We pulled back. I got long again, a 3 lot at around the 45 level in D period. It pushed up, took those off because I was targeting this wide point of control up here. Okay, I was targeting that wide point of control. We never really did get it in EF. We finally got it in G period. Or actually, no, we missed it in G period. Excuse me. We missed it in G period. And the overnight high was right there. Now, this is where things began to get a little interesting. You could tell that the day was grinding higher. We failed at an inside day down, right? fell down an inside day down. Sellers wanted to get extension and continuation below yesterday's low. Now, in the case for NASDAQ at this time, they had already gone and taken out both yesterday's low and yesterday's high. So they fell at an inside day down, rotated higher, took out the high, and then began to push higher for an inside day up, right? Also, an outside day up is what they were looking for as well. So a very bullish case is what it was looking like in the NASDAQ. They even took out their balance high by a pretty good margin, actually. And then, like, same thing in G period. Once that bond auction, excuse me, once that bond auction came out, kind of stirred the markets up a little bit. And then that's when the real volatility kicked in. I mean, look at the range in H period. Just absolutely massive for the NASDAQ. They took out that high and then flipped around, had a double outside day back to the other side, a reversal, double reversal is what it was, and rotated back lower, right? They were short, reversed to the long side, reversed long, back to the short side, and then continued push lower. They did not hold trend on the downside, I don't believe. Yeah, they did not hold trend on the downside. So as much as they did push there, they did not hold trend, but still very crazy. Now, in ES's case, we were struggling up here, pushing higher, trying to get up, get above that point of control from yesterday. We had a 10-wide point of control there. We were looking to push higher. And then on top of that, the overnight high was right there as well. So in G period, I got a little innovative, seen that they were pushing. There was no tempo or anything. I really wasn't aware of the bond auction that was coming out. Typically, those don't have any influence on the market. So I was like, you know what? This seems like a good short. I'm going to get short against the overnight high. We never did get the overnight low. I'm going to get short to get the against the overnight high and against that point of control, because they just really weren't doing a whole lot, right? They push, but they never did get it. And I was like, you know what? Eventually they're going to stop one time framing down, and we'll look for an afternoon pullback low. My target on the downside would be back to A's high around 35. So I got short, to give you my specific price. G period, I shorted a 2-lot at 54.50 to front run the overnight high. And as we came in, I took them off at G's low once H period opened up, or right before H period opened up. They pulled in, I took them off, and then they just pushed down lower. I took them off because I was like, you know what? Maybe we don't get much of a pullback. Maybe this is all they'll do, and then they'll rotate up higher. I was very wrong. Should have held on to that trade to at least target my initial target there. Now, I definitely would not have looked for the day's low or the initial balance low or even the overnight low at that point, which was what we targeted next on the downside. So we hit all those on the downside. This is where things got a little tricky for me. Took ebb and flow shorts at that point in H period on pushes up. Took ebb and flow shorts, made on a bunch of them because they were pushing up 10 points. I'd short. It might get put me in the heat for about 2 or 3 points, and then they roll over, and then I'd make 10 points on the trade. They push up, and then you know what I mean? So ebb and flow, every time they push up, it was a short. So that's what I was doing in H period. Then towards the end of H period, they began to push up a little bit, and I started to get short because I was like, you know what? They're off the lows by about 15 points. I'm going to go ahead and get short. So I began to get short. Around 76 is where my initial short was. It 76? No, it couldn't have been 76. Not 76, 86, excuse me. 86 was my initial short. It began to push up and continue to grind up once I period opened up. We continued to grind higher. I added onto my position at 91, and then I added again because I was just adding 1 lots at this time. I added again at 91, and then I was looking at, I don't know when it happened, but at some point I changed my quantity to 3 after I'd already had 3 on. So I had 86 kind on, added 91, added 93, and then I guess at some point I'd flip this to 3 because I was going to manually, if they came in, put a stop, because I had my stop way in up at 59.15, just above where the single prints filled. Because I was like, on a 3 lot, I'm okay taking that heat, right? But they continued to push up, and I was like, all right, they get up to 5,900 or 5,905, I might look to add on to that position. Well, they did push up. I wasn't quick enough. And then as they came in, I added at 58.97, a 3 lot on accident. It was meant to be a 1 lot, but then it ended up being short 6 contracts, and that's, you know, pretty large size for me. I really wasn't comfortable in the position. Kind of began to freak out a little bit because my average price was at that time. Average price was, I think, average price was right around 90. I want to say 90 and a quarter was my average price. And they kept pushing up, and was, you know, with 6 short, and they keep pushing up. You know, your P&L fluctuates a lot. And when you're down a couple $100, you know, you began to kind of like think, all right, should I remain in this trade? So I referred back to my notes, looked at the MGI. We had everything in the seller's favor at that moment. We had value, overnight low, 1 time framing down, initial balance low, point of control began to get lowered, single prints, and then we also had indices. So that alone kept me in the trade. And as it came in, because if you look at my 5-minute chart, you can see where we had pushed up to during that time frame. And as it began to come in, I began to peel them off around 85 and 86. I was really wanting to hold the trade because I did think that we would at least come back and test the lows at some point around 75. I wasn't expecting us to continue to push lower, but I was expecting us to at least test the lows. And clearly we did end up doing that. I should have held on to the position, but as it came in, because I was so large and my emotions were kind of heightened and my heartbeat was racing, I just took it all off. I should have at least left 3 to run down to the downside, but and, you know, got out of those initial 3. But very happy with how I handled that trade, because I easily could have just panicked and took that trade off for a pretty decent loss and would have ruined my day. But because I referred to the market, and they honestly, they could have pushed up, filled single prints, which would have filled at 1350, and then pushed up a little bit, stopped me out, and then rolled over. But at that point, I would have known that my trade idea was wrong, because we did not hold single prints, right? That was the only thing that was going to tell me that the trade idea was incorrect, was if we stopped with the single prints and filled them, right? So because I was very confident in the MGI as it came in, I took them off. I obviously should have held on, because boy, oh boy, that would have been a huge trade. Hell, if I had held on from the short up here at 54, that would have been a huge trade. But obviously, I'm not that type of trader where I'm short up here to hold and target, you know, all the way the fuck down here. Like, that's not going to happen. If there are people out there that said they shorted up here at the 50s to hold, and they, you know, they smacked it out of the park all the way down here to 880, yeah, they're fucking lying to you. But for me, it was an emotional trade. Happy with how I handled it, because like I said, I could have easily gotten out for a loss, but I handled it well, even though my emotions were high. And then as it came in, I got out of the position for a profit, and I'm very happy with it. Like I said, got back yesterday's loss, and then a little bit of game on top of that. After that trade night period, I stopped trading, nothing else. So going into tomorrow, what do we look for? All right. What do we look for going into tomorrow? Well, we have a double distribution day to the downside. We have an inside day down that got paid, surprisingly. Now, NASDAQ's case, they have an outside day down, and they're 1 time framing down the daily. For us in ES, we are now 1 time framing down on the daily, and we have an inside day down that got good continuation. So tomorrow, what do we look for? Well, since it's a double distribution day to the downside, if we open up inside the lower distribution, let me highlight this for you. If we opened up in the lower distribution, it's a large playground. We can do a lot of chopping around in this area between the lows and between the highs. But sellers want to remain below highs high of 59.08 or 59.07, right? Sellers want to remain below that in order for us to see potentially any more continuation to the downside. Best scenario is to open up in the lower distribution and then take out the day's low and continue to one time frame down. Now we do have targets on the downside. We have a wide point of control here. That's, I believe, 8 wide, right? Yeah, 8 wide point of control here, 7 wide point of control around the 58.30 level. And then we do have this gap that needs to get filled. And it starts at 58.05. And then that gap gets filled at 57.41. Now, in all of that, we do have the 200-day moving average down here at 57.98. That is a target on the downside. So as you can see, we are one time framing down on the daily. We took out that balance low, which was I had as the 13th low. Now, you could have had it as the 15th low, and we took it out by a pretty good margin. Which even if you had it up here, no matter what, you are one time framing down on the daily. That was just more of an area or a line in the sand for me. I firmly get below that, then the daily would have been one time framing down because it was such a large range. So on the downside, that is going to be a target around that 57.98 level or 5800, say the least. That is 58.16 is going to be a bit of a target. So that 58.30 to 5800 level is going to be targets on the downside. So tomorrow, sellers want to open up in the lower distribution, take out the day's low, push below 58.30. That'll be your first target. Next target, 58.16. Below that, 58 or 57.98. And then below there, gap fill. Okay. However, if we open up, push up, open up in the lower distribution, you want to see if they reject out of the upper distribution. Upper distribution, you can clearly see here, right? You can clearly see that this is the upper distribution held by a set of single prints. So you got upper and lower distribution. Bulls want to take this back, open up in the upper distribution, get back above 5,900, 5,905, push up higher, and put the daily back to balance. Now it's going to be a lot of work for that to happen. Sellers, like I said, do not want to find any acceptance above 5,905. They do, then the game is over. But for the sellers, opening up in the lower distribution, pushing below 5850 would target those levels on the downside, 5800 ultimately being the one on the downside that you target. So daily is one time framing down firmly. NASDAQ also one time framing down to the downside. Let's see if they have their next target is going to be the low down here at 21, at 20,972 is going to be the next downside target for the NASDAQ, right? They dipped their toe into the lower distribution today and then got rejected out of it from that day. What day was that? That is the 13th day. You can see here they had a set of single prints. They dipped their toe into that lower distribution. I'm going to highlight it. So sellers tomorrow for NASDAQ pretty much want to open below 21,200 or 21,200, 21,200. They want to open below that and then find acceptance below 2,100 essentially. Below that gets this small low gap here. Below there, the next gap that gets filled way down here at 20,300. So, yeah, pretty much daily's one time framing down. You have my thoughts, you have my ideas. Another thing to note, just real quick, something I find interesting. We blew through this little bit of support that we had here on the hourly chart. This is the upward trend that we've been holding for quite some time. Below, if you hold below this trend, personally, I think you're going to go visit 5750 at some point, which would include that gap fill. So at some point, I do think this gap on the downside is going to get filled. That would require us to get below the 200-day moving average. But the 20-day moving average is right there around that gap fill. So I think maybe if we did push to that, that would be an area that we would fill the gap, and you could look for a long against that area and the 20-day moving average to come back above the 200. Hopefully that makes sense. I know this was long-winded, but crazy day. It needed to be explained to myself, to hear out loud, to those that may watch my videos. I do appreciate it. If you'd like to learn more, go check out camelbacktrading.org. Great mentor, Paul Asmar. Great group of guys. Go check them out.